Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining me for the first ever official episode podcast of the Identity Podcast. What is the Identity Podcast, you might ask? This is what it is. I got it written down just so I don't mess up this time. This podcast is for everyone, but it goes over the process and mental hurdles people go through when they have done something their whole life, and eventually they have to give up that thing that they loved that completely identifies them, and they must rediscover who they are. This topic ain't really truly discussed and spoken about, and it's usually left up to be dealt with internally. Um, and what I wanted to do was create a platform to be able to express kind of the mental hurdles and obstacles that one might go through when it comes to giving up a sport you played your whole life, giving up a job that you've worked for 10, 15 years that people know you as, maybe going into the world post divorce and people can't separate you from your loved one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a million different examples that you could use. But at the end of the day, it's about getting rid of the old you, not getting rid of the old you, but kind of turning over a new leaf and having people learn about who the real you actually is. That's been there all along, but there's been this cloud over you that's been putting a barrier on basically your outwardly appearance slash identity towards the masses, essentially. Now, this is the first episode, so there's going to be some miscues. There's going to be a few mess ups. We're getting used to this, y'all. So bear with me, brace with me. I appreciate you coming on this ride with me. It's going to be a good time. We're going to have some laughs. We're going to have some cries. We're going to have some good times. It's going to be good overall. So sit back, relax, get your cold beverage, get you some popcorn, maybe go to the store and get you, some Ritz crackers. Not that I'm sponsoring this video yet, but if Ritz want to come sponsor with me, I'm all down for the cause. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much what it's about. And it will be me this first episode, solo dolo, but in the future we'll have a lot of guests and we'll be discussing their point of view on it. And this, I'll have former teammates of mine. I'll have people who, have done stuff that since they were kids and now they're adults and they're switching what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of good things and great people that I got lined up ready to come and join me. But this first episode is basically a blueprint, stepping stone to kind of see what I'm talking about, give you a point of view on, what I had to deal with in correlation to the whole podcast example of or podcast topic itself and how it relates to how it can relate to a lot of people and how it related to especially me, because I had to deal with this major issue myself. So let's get into it. So my story basically goes is I grew up my whole life playing sports essentially since I was in 5th grade. And, that's all I pretty much knew. Who pretty much people knew me as. People see me on the bus like, oh, you're going to practice afternoon. You're the sports kid, right? I was like, yeah, that's me. Wasn't ashamed of it. Super proud of it. Was happy to do it or be known as that. It wasn't really something I thought about like, oh, like this is what people know me as. It was just kind of a thing, you good at something, you're going to play sports growing up and you're just going to excel at that and you're going to let that known who you are because for one, that brings you popularity. So people are going to like you a lot. People are going to respect you. People are going to put you on a little higher of a pedestal. Who doesn't want that, I mean, that's just kind of how it is, especially coming from the Midwest. We're not exposed to a lot of, I'm from Kansas City, by the way. But in the Midwest, you're not really exposed to a lot of other things that you can be known for greatly other than like sports and I don't know, maybe if you're running for class president or something like that, but people don't care about that. They care if you're good on your quarterback of the football team, if you're the star pitcher of the baseball team, if you're the point guard of the basketball team, the star player, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's what's going to get you the likes, the clicks, the hype, and the clout. And growing up, I wanted that. I wanted the clout, I wanted the hype, I wanted to be known, I wanted to be liked. And that was one avenue that seemed to be flawless and seamless into getting that. Now, you had to be good, of course. So that went into it as well. You couldn't just be playing and a part of the team, you had to be like contributing. So, yeah, that's pretty much who I was known, what I was known as, who I was, known to be. Um, I particularly played football, basketball, and track growing up. Was excelled mostly at football and track, and yeah, played that middle school, high school. Eventually, was good enough in high school to go to college with it. And when I first started getting, you know, my the perception, when I first started feeling others' perception of me, and like that's all I was I'd say my freshman year of college, because that's when you kind of you're starting anew. You can forget the old you kind of and go to a new you, and nobody's gonna know, nobody's gonna care because you're meeting all these new people, and they're definitely embracing the new you, or the first you that they're meeting essentially. And I was doing two sports my freshman year. I did football and I did track, and it was a hell of a schedule. Uh, I don't not recommend it, but for me in track, I was doing like mid distance. I wasn't just doing like short sprints or jumps, so it was a lot taxing, very taxing on my body and mentally, because you're going from one practice to the next. It was a lot. But with me doing that, it really didn't give me any other. It didn't really give me any other creative outlet. It was kind of just like that's it. I doing that, going to class, and that's it. Nothing else. I had major other interests. I was very interested in music. I was very interested in, I guess, somewhat photography. I like taking a lot of pictures, but dudes taking pictures wasn't, you know, looked at in a great light growing up from where I'm from. It was more the girls' thing to do that. Yeah, I enjoyed movies, um, going to the roller rink, and video games a lot. I was heavy on video games. Played competitively growing up in different little tournaments, the whole nine. But at the same time, it wasn't something that people was like, "Oh, like you're great at video games." Like it was kind of like we can play, but don't go too crazy with it. But mostly, it was only cool to play like 2K and Madden and PGA, all that stuff. Not like Dungeons and Dragons and Warcraft and Starcraft and sci-fi video games. That's my thing. I was into the adventure games and the sci-fi. I like the shooting games too, like Call of Duty and Halo, but mostly it was like World of Warcraft, Starcraft, those strategy ones that you had to like sit down and think a lot, and not too many people that I know played because they're more popular on the East and West Coast rather than the Midwest. And I grew up in a time where it was online was slowly becoming a thing. It wasn't like a thing all the time. I got my first online game when I was fifth grade, so it was, it was good for me. Um, Anywho, so yeah, that was, an interest. And then college kind of, first freshman year, I was really busy with school the whole time. Didn't really have a lot of time to do anything else. So me just kind of being known for this one thing, that was it. And, throughout high school and college, that's all I really had time for was sports practice, sports games, sports trips, practicing. Like I really didn't do too much else. I mean, of course you party a little bit and you kind of go out with your friends and do this, that, and the third, but I'd say 80% of your time, if you're doing two or more sports, that's pretty much all you got time for. You don't have time for much any other extracurriculars, or kind of like being heavily invested, unless your parents have you on a rigorous schedule, like Christian McCaffrey, and he's learning how to play the piano and learn another language and all these other things. That wasn't the case for me, nor was it looked at, nor was it like pushed upon me either. I mean, we didn't have the money for all that either. Um, and just to give you guys an insight, so yes, I went to school and played football and track, but then after my freshman year, I decided to transfer, and I only played football because I need that load off my plate. So I transferred to a new school. And when you're going to a big D1 school, I went to Mizzou, the schedule pretty much, year round is for football specifically is you're training all year. You get 2 3 weeks off in the wintertime, and you get a week off, a couple weeks, a week or two off right before the summer starts. Right before summer, I think you get like a week or two off, and then before fall camp, you get like a few days or like a week off. So total, you get maybe a little bit over a month off, depending on where you finish in the bowl game too. If you go to a bowl game, you'll have a long winter break. If you don't go to one, but you're still working, practicing, working out, training, the whole nine. And in college, a typical schedule kind of goes like you have workouts in the morning from 6 to 7 or 8. Go to class from 8 to whenever, 1, 12, maybe 2. You come back to the facility, rehab, maybe have a workout in. And then if it's in season or a spring ball, you'll have practice from around 2:30 to either 6:30, 7 o'clock. Then after that, you'll have training again, or training. You'll have rehab for maybe 30 minutes or so, however much you feel like doing, or get like a post practice lift in. Some people would do that, film study, etc. You're going to be at the facility for another hour, most likely ish. And then you'll eat dinner, and you'll get home probably like 7:30, 8 o'clock. That's a good average time you get home, unless like there's some instances where practice ends early on certain days, or you just have a workout and it ends earlier. But for the most time, you're getting home kind of late. Then you got, homework. And then if you do homework, if you have homework, you got a couple hours to chill, then you might be tired. And there's a saying, when you play college sport, you only can do 3 out of these 4 things. You can either eat. You can either sleep, party, study, or get extra work in with your sport. You can't focus on all 4 of them at once. You got to sacrifice one of them. You either sacrifice the extra working out, you either sacrifice the sleep, you either sacrifice the studying, like academics, or you're sacrificing your, what is it, eat? No, I keep saying eat. Sleep, school, party, or the partying, or you're sacrificing the partying. School, party, workout, sleep. Now me, I was trying to do all of it. I got a decent balance. I was a part of a lot of different groups, but you got to pick. You got to pick 3 of them. And most of the time, people will either sacrifice sleep or sacrifice studying. More so athletes sacrifice the studying, but hey, to each his own. Not here to tell people what they should or shouldn't do. That's just what the typical people, the typical football athlete would tend to do. No problem with that. So yeah, that's the schedule. And a big reason also, why I wanted to divulge into this, I'll just interrupt real quick, is because the mental, I guess, aspect behind figuring out kind of what you want to do isn't really pushed upon, specifically playing, like when you're football playing in college, isn't really pushed upon you trying to figuring out what you want to do. There's an undermine of, thinking that the NFL is always a realistic possibility, even though they do get, I will say they are very keen on telling players that, look, you only got a 1%, 2% chance of going. Like, you don't have that much of a chance. So you need to make sure that you get your education. You're a student athlete first. They emphasize that. Student go to class. They do class checks, the whole 9. But however, the way they have the schedule, which I already explained, the way they kind of treat you better than the average student, the way they, say that you need to be better than everyone else, gives you a false sense of security that you have a good chance of going to the NFL, when that is not true whatsoever. I have mentees, I always tell them that they're playing sports, like, look, do the sport, focus on what you're doing, but make sure you have other hobbies, make sure you're doing something else that brings you joy, happiness, and, a lot of excitement other than just this sport, because this thing could go away with an injury, this thing could go away with a bad situation, this thing could go away just because you can't move on anymore. And they have the statistic charts up in our locker room everywhere you go about like the percentage of going to the NFL, but it kind of is the way they treat you and the way that, you know, the amount of time that you're spent with this, because college football is a business, it kind of contradicts that saying of, you know, take care of your grades first. You know, there will never be a day to where a player misses a game because they need to study or practice because they need to study unless they're academically ineligible. There will never be a day to where a player is going to prioritize school over football, no matter if you're playing uh, 60 snaps a game or 10 snaps a game. You're always going to have to put the sport first. So it's athlete, student, and it's a business. The school's making money off of you, essentially. Back in the day, they didn't pay you. Now they pay certain players, which is great. I'm full proponent on that, but it's basically a job. It's a job. And yeah, when something's a job that, you know, you have fun with as well, you're going to put all your time, energy, focus into it, therefore leaving a void in other areas of yourself that you haven't discovered yet, or you haven't even had the time to think about and discover yet. So that brings me into my regular freshman year. Sorry, freshman year was first year. So when I transferred into so when the old transfer rule is when you had transferred, you had to sit out a year, basically a semester of that sport, because that was just the rule. You couldn't like nowadays you can transfer schools and you have no limitations on what you can. You can jump right into the game, you know. Back in the in the old days, not even that long ago, you had to sit out. And so when I transferred, I had to sit out, couldn't really do a part of team activities. So I kind of had to, that was my one time in college. I kind of got to live somewhat like a normal student. You go to certain things in the team still, like, you know, maybe meetings or weight room stuff or whatever, but you don't practice with the team. Like you're ineligible, so you can't. You got to do your own thing. And so during that time, it was like the first time, like, wow, like I don't have practice. I don't have a bunch of responsibilities other than class. And so I was like, wow. So I joined like a bunch of clubs. I joined, you know, a bunch of groups. I was working. I was meeting a bunch of people. I was going out. And I was like, now the college is pretty fun. You know, college is, it was not, there was no pressure. It was just kind of just go do your thing, live your life. And finally, you know, meet all these people that are from all over the place, and you kind of got a lot of exposure to everything that you could possibly imagine. At a big school, at smaller schools, it's a little different. I'm speaking from the point of view of someone who went to a big D1 college, Mizzou, and yeah, it was cool. I mean, but at the same time, my focus wasn't really on too much figuring out other things. Like I did it just like get involved, but it was mostly just okay. Like let me use this time to work out extra, kind of have like explore myself and my surroundings while I have the time. But once the semester's over, it's like it's back to work. So definitely was a good thing. Now after that, you know, the semester's over. Finally went back to practice with the team. Yada yada yada. Got that started. Now with all that, with as going through school as a college athlete, I mentioned the schedule earlier. You don't really have time, like I said, to kind of figure out other things you like and join other things. You're not, it's kind of frowned upon to do study abroad, which I really wanted to do. And I know some other people wanted to do as well, but you can't miss a whole semester. You're either missing all spring ball, which is not good, or you're not missing the fall season. That's when the games are played. Or missing summer, which is a possibility. Like people can do that, but it's not, it's kind of, it's looked down upon because it's voluntary, but it's not really voluntary. Or unless you like the starting, you got to solidify the starting spot and you're going to be a tough first round draft pick and have no danger of any repercussions involving playing time, you can do what you want. But those people are usually, you know, they're not missing practice for nothing because this is who they are. This is what they're doing. So you can't really afford to miss these things in the grand scheme of things, unless you're willing to risk, you know, your spot or playing time or whatever. And yeah, so you don't get the opportunity to kind of involve yourself with many other things outside of football. I even know when I was in college, my coach wouldn't even want his players to join fraternities. And that was a big thing to some people, you know, but And some people eventually still did it, regardless, myself. But he was like, "Oh, it's a distraction. We don't want you to do that. We don't want you to, we need you all focused, all here, all the time." But I think, you only have 4, 5 years in college, and then you got to figure out your life. But if you focus all in on doing one thing, this football thing or sport, whatever it is, you don't you don't really get to learn anything else. And so you're behind the eight ball once it's time to get shit started. You know what I mean? Like once it's time to put things pedal to the metal and get a job and trying to figure out where your life's gonna go, you're taking another 2, 3, 4, 5 years to kind of figure that out. And that's a danger, because then you're even more behind the eight ball, because a lot of kids don't even figure it out after college regularly, but then they get an idea later. And then you know add football into that, and then you're really not starting till later for most. And then so that's just, I think they need to find they they need to find, I think college football especially needs to kind of find a way to give players more resources in outside of football, and helping the players kind of like express themselves, or find a way to help them figure out what they want to do. They have counselors there, they have tutors there, all that stuff to help players, with getting their grades up. And they talk to you like, okay, what do you want to major in, that stuff. But kids don't know. You don't know what you like. But if you maybe go on a field trip to a museum, or go travel to Europe somewhere, or go inside, I don't know, work a day at a job with some different companies and whatever, and you can kind of see the day-to-day things, and like, oh, I like this, oh, I don't like this, oh, I can handle this, oh, I couldn't handle this, then that will help so much in life after your sport, football essentially. And we didn't we had people, the only things I remember is we had people come in that had, like, the former players that had jobs, and they're working, at a car dealership, or they're a coach, or they're working in insurance, or they're working, you know, at a bank. And those are the typical jobs that we got, like, that people came in and talked to us about. And, they honestly, they did not sound too enthused. So it really was kind of just like, okay, we have this meeting with this dude. It was important. They did a great job speaking, and kudos to them if they love their job, but a it wasn't the best, I guess, representation of life after school, just because, not saying anybody could get these jobs, but they're pretty much like standard jobs that, since you played football here, you have a leg up on other people, because that's great on your resume. And you could get this job that you might not even want, but it's a job. And they didn't really focus on what kind of jobs we got afterwards, or kind of what we did afterwards. They just wanted to make sure we graduated. That was a big thing. Just graduate, just graduate, just graduate, because it looks good. It looks good, basically, on paper. And then to bring more students in here to say, okay, we're going to get your son graduated from this school, and he's going to have a good football career here. Yada, 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 yada. And yeah, so, like, for me, I kind of figured out, luckily, because I was involved in a lot of different things and exposed to different people. But I kind of figured out what I wanted to do the winter of my sophomore, junior year, back when I was at home after a bowl game. And Netflix was kind of new at home at this time, not the box Netflix, but like well, if you remember, Netflix was originally, you had to go to like Price Chopper or Walmart and go put money in and get rents, like the DVDs, and watch those movies. But then after that, they finally had it at home, like we have it today, but the very early stages of it. And I was like, wow, like all these shows on TV, on this channel, this streaming thing, which is crazy to me because I never even knew like all these existed. And so I started watching some things, and I was like, wow, like this is pretty cool. And then Netflix back then would really push certain shows, because there wasn't a ton on back in the day, but they would push certain shows. And I was watching a couple shows that kind of got me interested in acting, and like, oh, like they're actors in the show. Like I've watched shows before that have actors in them, but it kind of just hit me just now, because these shows, they were trying to become like actors and trying to become entertainers or singers or work in show business essentially. And it looked so feasible and doable. And I was like, wow, it's that easy? Nah. And I was like, I could do that. I was saying to myself, I could do that. And the two shows was Weeds. Well, Weeds, if you've seen Weeds, it has nothing to do with that. It's about selling weed. It's a great show. Great show. Kind of tails off at the end of the last couple seasons, but great show. But the characters in the show were very relatable because it was just in like a regular neighborhood, kind of where I grew up in. And the characters, you would see these people, and they're like everyday life type of people. So that's kind of what it related to me. And then the other show, which they, Jesus, the other show, sorry, my phone was ringing, uh, was a show about people, high schoolers, uh, slowly joining like a music troupe, and then a couple of them wanted to be on Broadway, and then someone wanted to have a recording contract, and then someone wanted to be an actor in or a comic and an actor in movies and stuff like that. And that show was promoted again and again and again, and I refused to watch it like every single day until one day I'm just like, fine, I've watched like all these other shows, I will give this show a chance. And it kind of caught the first episode. They have this student who's in the shower and he's singing, but he's in the locker room shower by himself singing. And the music teacher comes in to like meet the football coach or something, and he hears him singing, and he's like, who's that amazing voice? And I'm gonna just push this up real quick. There we go. He's like, who's that amazing voice? And he finds out who it is, and it's the quarterback of the football team. And he's like, wow, like you could do that. And I'm thinking to myself, that's how easy it is, because he got put on after that. He got put in the group, the singing group. Eventually got to go do these competitions and yada yada yada. And it was just like he got put on. But the thing is, in the show, it was kind of relatable because his teammates was like clowning on him for joining this group. But he said he liked it, and he said he liked doing the thes. Why am I saying this wrong? The thespian singing, dancing, all that stuff. And then his teammates ended up joining it too. And they became like the people that's running the school. And that was kind of like, I've seen shows like similar to like that before, like growing up High School Musical. I've seen that before, but it was different, I think, because this show, it was a series, so you could see more. It wasn't just a 2-hour movie, so like went quick and you missed a lot of small details, and like they actually hit on points that are real. And that's kind of why it encapsulated. And I know I've been skipping over the title, but the name of the show was Glee. Now, it was embarrassing to watch at the time because it was, I think the show has been around for show has been around for a few years at the time, but I just refused to watch it because, I it wasn't a typical show that somebody like me should be watching, per se. But I'm usually a person to give things chances, and the show caught my eye, and I watched every episode. It was very funny. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It was very funny, witty, uh, great, dynamic between the different actors, and great storylines, I think, overall, until the latter couple seasons. But for the most part, that show was top tier. And if it wasn't for that show, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Now, in seeing the show, it kind of like I said, it inspired me to get started in trying to let me look into acting. So I looked in, I Googled it, see how it can be a job, see how it can be a lifestyle. What do you have to do to get into it? Because I'm from Missouri. Like I said, I don't know my left from right when it comes to getting in the industry. And I got all pretty much the basic information down, and it inspired me to, start taking some theater classes in college. I took acting class. I took a scenic working class. I took, I actually ended up getting a minor in film studies, and met some cool people through it too. So that, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't even got started. But then, I started working for the modeling agency back where I'm in Kansas City, where I'm from. And then that kind of set me up a little bit after college, because I wasn't talking to nobody about what I wanted to do after, because nobody on the team or no one of my friends was doing the same thing. None of them. Like I can't. Maybe some new friends that I made in the classes that I took, but none of my like friends that I played on the team with or was kicking it with was doing none of the stuff. And I was a far cry from what they thought that I wanted to do. Everybody thought I wanted to like coach or keep playing football, go to the NFL, yada yada. But at this time, I was thinking like, okay, NFL could not work out, which is a high possibility it doesn't. I'm not the star player on the team. I'm not getting that much playing time. I need to think about these things. And I don't want to just work a dead end job to where I'm going into an office and I'm just working and that's my life. I knew I never wanted that. I never wanted to have that kind of lifestyle. I wanted to kind of have a job that I'm striving for something and I can hit it and it's my my cap isn't capped. Like I'm not okay, $70,000 for this year, or $80,000, or $90,000, or $150,000. I wanted my cap always to kind of have not a lid on it, and my aspirations not to have a lid on it. And if it wasn't sports, then it had to be something that I could create. And I've always kind of been like, create my own thing type. I sold keychains I made in high school. I was always doing these little schemy businesses growing up, selling this, selling that. But I didn't kind of realize I was an entrepreneur in mind until I thought about what I wanted to do after. And acting, actor is an entrepreneur job, but it's not really thought of it like that as an actor. It's more just like you're trying to get a job and you'll make money doing that. But it is an entrepreneur. You're your own product. So you kind of gotta take care of yourself. You got to eat right. You got to sleep right. You got to exercise. You got to practice. You make sure you got good memory to memorize the lines. If you're a singer, you got to be a good singer. If you dance, you got to be a good dancer. You got to practice all these things because you're investing in yourself, and you can't have these things break down, or else you will get no jobs. Therefore, you'll have no money. Therefore, you'll have no career. Pretty, plain and simple. But not all entrepreneurs are their own product. They're either making a product or they're selling a product. And, you're not the product itself. But anywho, I digress. Yeah, so was interested in that. School goes on. We're junior year, playing through. And what they have at most D1 schools is they have most D1 schools, 99.9% of them, unless you have some sanction on you, you have a pro day. Now, what a pro day is basically it's an assessment for NFL scouts to see how you pan or compare against all the other athletes in college. You will do tests as run a 40, how many times you could bench press, squat, long jump, how high you can jump, the whole nine, 3-cone test. And the better you get, the better, your attributes are, and like quote unquote the higher your draft projection could be. Now it's not only your draft projection isn't only based on that, but it helps to do well in these things, because if you run a 4.240, then I don't care if you played 5 snaps in college, they're gonna get a look. And if you run a slow 40, they could be like, oh, this is guy not what we think he is. And so that's what a pro day is. But when you're a junior, you have a junior pro day if you're not declared for the draft already as a junior. Because I'm just breaking this down. I know a lot of y'all might know what the rules are, but if you don't know how these rules work, and this is how it works. You only have to play 3 years of college football before you can declare for the draft. So you can go to the draft as a redshirt sophomore, as a junior, as a senior. And, you don't have to be a senior to do pro day. That pro day is specifically for the people that have either declared for the draft early or they're seniors and they have to do it. They're not coming back to school to play another season. And so, yeah. But when you're a junior and you're not declared for the draft, they have a junior pro day. Or it could be a sophomore and do it too if they know they're going to be going to the draft next year. And this is basically a mock to kind of get you ready for a mock combine or mock pro day to get you ready for next year. And so they I don't want to say they force everyone to do this, but if you don't do it, it's like kind of like, why wouldn't you do it? Like it's kind of like, okay, here's the junior pro day. This is the day we're doing it. Boom. Like it's just another day. You're going to do your stuff. And but giving that, impression is kind of like, okay, like you need to do this because you have a chance of going to the NFL under, underwritten kind of thing. That's what it feels like. And so we do the same thing, run the 40s, do the broad jump, do the bench press and the squats, all that stuff. Some scouts come to that actually, and they'll talk to you afterwards. And then that kind of gives you a good insight. I'm like, dang, like I can do it, like I got this. Even if you're not playing that much, it'll kind of like say like, okay, like I can comparing against, because we had these things called SEC standards, and it compares you to all the other people in your conference on the average. For example, an SEC standard average on bench press for my specific position, defensive back, was like 16 reps, or no, it was like 12 or 13 or 14 reps, I think. And I was hitting like 16, 17, or 18. And I was like, okay, like my standard is above the regular, so, or the rest, so that's really good. It's like that for the rest of the board. Um, Maybe I'll make a video about SEC standards in college football, but that's not really the topic going on here. But yeah, you do that, and in your mind, you kind of like, okay, like there's a chance type settings. And so fast forward, go through junior year, senior year. Kind of knew, like, getting drafted was probably not happening. Wasn't playing enough for that. And yeah, that was basically my mindset going into it. And so it's time. The season's wrapping up. It was a very long season. There was a lot of crazy things that happened that year. If you don't know about Mizzou's 2015 football season, just look it up. It needs to turn into a movie in itself, and Spielberg needs to direct it. But yeah, it was crazy. Anywho, season's ending up, and winding down, and it's crunch time. It's time to graduate. As I'm graduating in the winter, and I need to figure out what exactly the plan is. And so that fall, I kind of, I figured out what I wanted to do. I was gonna go back home, save up money, move to LA, and then do as many acting things as I could do in Kansas City as possible. Get jobs, and do the whole thing. Uh, and I wasn't, during that whole last year of college, I think the only person who kind of asked me what I was doing after was my uh, counselor. She was like, "So what are you gonna do?" She was pretty straightforward, and I really appreciate her. She didn't play no games. She didn't, if you was BSing her about what you was trying to do, she would clock you on it real quick. But yeah, she said, "What are you gonna do?" And I told her, like, this is what I want to do. And she's like, that's pretty difficult, right? Like, it's not like anybody can just go out there and just be, a star. And I was like, yeah, I know, but it's kind of what I want to do. And she said, all right, well, just make sure that, you give yourself the best opportunity, and kind of just go for it. Because she didn't have really much advice, because she did not familiar. She was an English advisor, because I was a communications and English major, and she really didn't know too much about that. But she said, look, just say it's expensive. I would save up some money, then go. And I was like, all right, bet. So I decided to finish up and get a job as a teacher right when I graduated. I had like a week or two off, and then I started up teaching like middle school, high school. And I did that for about a year. And at the same time, I was working so many jobs at that time. Like, I was a teacher, and I was a camp counselor, and I was a swim instructor, and I was working at this bowling alley, and I was working at this gym, and at the same time working acting jobs, because right when I graduated, the first thing I auditioned for, I booked, and it was a play. And I started doing a lot of plays and whatnot, and then I did some commercials, and I did a couple of movies. And this is all in Kansas City, so relatively small scale, but you get my point. I was trying to build up, quote unquote, my resume, and then go out to LA, and then make the magic happen, but also save the money. That was the biggest thing, because I could not go out there broke. But anywho, yeah, it wasn't. I was only asked by her, and none of my coaches really asked me what I was doing, which now looking back is kind of disheartening a little bit, because they just kind of just use you for what they need you for, and you're not really cared for afterwards, unless you're going to the NFL. If you're going to the NFL, they like love you, and they check up on you and send you things and call you. But if you don't and you're not coaching, they kind of just forget about you. And it's a tough pill to swallow, especially when you're so like loved and revered as this athlete. Everyone knows who you are, everyone sees you, all these fans. But then when it's like when you're done, nobody cares. You're just like, nobody that used to care cares anymore. They just don't. Not And the worst thing is not even the coaches. Like, I don't think I've communicated with a couple coaches I've had, but very like my head coach I have communicated with. He's been good, but when I see them, but that might be it. Maybe like one other coach, maybe two actually, but very, very, very little. Because I was going into an area that they weren't familiar with whatsoever, and it was kind of looked at as like silly and like you're doing that. Not that they knew, but if I would have told them, they would have been looked at me like sideways and given me that doubt that I did not need to seep into my brain and my soul and my spirit. And same thing with my teammates. Like, I wasn't really open to them about that either, because I didn't need the doubt of others to seep in, because I kind of had an idea of how people would react. Because most people that I graduated with, they didn't know what they wanted to do either, to be honest. Like, I mean, some of them kept trying to play football. If they could play Canadian or overseas, or they tried to like go to another sport, or they tried to, for the general consensus was like a little bit of lost or graduate school. Most went to graduate school, and they gave them more time to kind of figure out what they wanted, because then they don't have football constraining their life, so they have time to think about what they want to do. But I did not want to go to grad school. I did not have time for that. I did not. That was not part of the plan. And so I really wasn't nobody to relate to in that aspect. Also, once again, we're in Missouri. This is not a typical Missouri thing to do, or have ideas and strives and ideas and wants and desires for. And so, yeah, it would have definitely helped if I had some guidance, or someone to even talk to about the whole thing in general, that can kind of see where I'm coming from a little bit. But it wasn't no, I just kind of had to figure it out on my own. Like, I was just, making my mistakes, which is, going to happen, but also just kind of mentally and internally kind of just dealing with that, you know, heads, that mental fortitude that I had to keep my eyes on the prize without kind of like having too many doubts per se, or else that would have gotten me off track. And yeah, when I think mentally, generally, when you kind of, when school's over and we graduate and whatnot, it's kind of like I refer back to your whole identity and your whole purpose, I guess, was focused on this sport. And now that it's gone, you kind of don't know who you are. You kind of like lost in the sauce, lost in the music. You lose yourself in the music the moment you want it. Wish you never had to let it go. If you don't know that song, you better know it. But yeah, lost in the music. And you don't know, you kind of get self-doubt. You get a lot of self-doubt. You have a lot of self-reflection on, like, who am I? Was I not good enough? Am I the problem? Like, this is all I knew. This is all I wanted. This is all I ever dreamed about. And now I don't have it. And now I'm a shell of myself. I was a shell of myself for a while. I didn't want to watch football. I didn't want to play catch. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to do nothing, because I didn't achieve my goal, which was go to the NFL. And yeah, it hurt, it hurt. But, and you didn't want to talk to others about it, because it was just bringing up bad memories and what ifs, and if I would have done this, would this happen? And if I would have done that, and that's not healthy. And other teammates, I know some people really kind of like, they delete their social media. They don't really communicate too much. They're kind of like just a complete shell of themselves. Like, they don't know who they are. And I didn't know who I was for a little bit either. I had a new goal that I was already ready and set go for. But at the same time, I'm always going around people and they're like, oh, like, did you ever think about going to the NFL, or what happened here? Or what about this? And it's always about football. Or like, this is the football player, right? And I was like, it messes with you because you get that a lot because people seen you in this one light for so long, and now you got to try to click and figure out who the hell am I and what is my purpose. And was this all I was meant to be? Was just this athlete, and now I have all my life ahead of me. I mean, you're only 22, 23 years old when you graduate if you don't go pro or don't continue playing, and you got to kind of figure it out. And like, what's going on? And that's going to be hard for a lot. That's very, very, very difficult. I mean, that being the whole basis of this entire podcast is like self-identity and our identity, and giving you a sense of identity crisis, essentially. But no, it's definitely, I think with that, it helps to have people to talk to about that subject. Like, okay, what do I do now? Some people can help you walk you through it. Some people can give you an insight, like, well, what do you like to do? And a lot of times it'll be like, I don't know what I like. Well, if that's the case, traveling, trying new things, watching new shows, reading new books, going new place, like whatever is going to help, something is going to spark some inspiration, and there's going to be a click. When I was watching, like I said, when I'm going to go back, when I was watching those Netflix shows, it was a click. It happened so quick, and I was like, what? Like, I actually like this thing. And this is like a real job you could do. To that point, there wasn't nothing else besides football that I was like, I really loved. And this was like that was the first moment since then where it was kind of like a wow moment. Like, wow, like, I actually like this. I actually want to do this, and I could see myself in this environment moving forward for the rest of my life, because it wasn't no cap. There was no cap on it. There was no ceiling. You could go as high as you could possibly go as long as you put forth the effort. And if I weren't to watch that show and sit down a moment or even give myself a chance, I could have just gave up. I don't know where I would be. I honestly don't know. Maybe eventually I would have came around to it, but everything happens for a reason. But if you don't put yourself out there and give yourself a chance to explore things that you like and you love and you have even a slight interest in, you never know where it could turn. I mean, you could go, say you love going Marvel and Avengers, and you go to a Comic-Con event and someone you've always kind of wanted to get involved in that, and someone's there like hiring to work at, Marvel or Avengers red carpet events, or they work background, or they're a stunt driver, stunt actor. And it's like, oh, that'd be cool. Like for these movies, I would love to do that, but I never thought about it. Well, here's your chance, but you gave yourself a chance going to this Comic-Con event, and the opportunity kind of just falls in your lap, or the idea, at least, even if you don't get something there, the idea falls in there, and then you can go from there. Something spawns. But if you don't ever do it, don't ever go somewhere, don't ever try something new, it's never going to happen. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is just, if you're struggling with kind of figuring out who you are and you don't know what you like and don't know what you want to do, just try something that you semi like, and then it'll spark something. You can meet somebody, you could get an epiphany, something. Anywho, yeah, a lot of self-doubt, all that stuff, people fall into those things, and it's very unhealthy. And I think a big problem as well is like football. The school, you give all this energy to your school and your sport, and you have your degree and you have your memories and you have paraphernalia or whatever else to show for it at the end, but you have a whole life to live, and you're not really helped much in regards to what you want to do afterwards. What you really want to do, the most thing I've seen is like them just trying to get you a job and get on your feet doing that. But if you got a job and you hate it and it's kind of just like a whatever job, like I'm fine with it type thing, I don't know if for me, life ain't worth that. I think even if I'd make less money doing something I love than doing something that I'm making a bunch of money and I just don't really care about, because then you're like living no purpose, unless you live to just go out on the weekends and party. Then you have money for that, I guess. But it's about whatever you want, man. And whatever you want is going to bring you happiness, joy, fulfillment in your soul and spirit, then I think that beats anything all day, every day. But if I'm having the offer of taking Jay-Z or that $500,000 and taking the money, I want to meet a Jay-Z, but not more than I want to get that 500,000. Sorry, Jay. But anywho, yeah, that was kind of my mindset and how I felt about this whole situation. And you know, I eventually kept exploring new things and after graduated, kept going, pushing the envelope of what I was interested in, pushing the envelope of my likes, things that spawned, um, you know, thought, cognitive thinking and whatnot, and kind of just, I started out just wanting to do acting, and then took some time, and I'll fast forward a few years. I moved to New York, whole bunch of whole lifestyle change, great things happen, I'm booking things left and right, and then COVID happens, but then I spark more interest because I have more downtime to think about what else I want, and then I discover I have a love for finance, I have a love for entrepreneurship, I have a love for creating things. And this year alone, I talked to some people who do content creation, and I always wanted to do that, but I never knew how to get started. I thought I was always too late. I thought I could never think of anything, but then they sparked that. And then it's just, I'm giving myself chances by going, trying new things. The way I met these people was signing up for this show. And it's always surprises me how like little things that I like, small little things that I liked growing up, or little things that kind of like pointed in a certain direction, I didn't take, but they come back around, and I kind of like, finally take it the next time, and then it turns into something that I enjoy doing. I mean, I've always wanted to kind of do like a podcast or a forum similar to this, or kind of like this, but I always was like, oh, I don't have time, I'm too late, like it's gonna be a lot of effort or just whatever. But look, it's worth it to try something, and if it fails, it fails. At least you tried. Nobody's gonna knock you for trying, and it's not gonna hurt no one. At least you gave it a shot. There's plenty of things I've tried and I was like, okay, it's not for me, but hey, I know it's not for me now. I'm not thinking like, oh, well, dang, well, what if I would have done that? Or what if I would have done that? I definitely take a leap of faith a lot of times. More times than not, I'm glad I did. But yeah, I mean, that that's pretty much my little story, and how I had a problem with, figuring out who I was, and like becoming a shell of myself. I mean, I didn't really want to deal with football for a few years. I didn't want to talk to nobody about it. I didn't want to go back to school, and like I didn't go to a football games for my alma mater for years because I just had this like embarrassment and this just this like shame, just this feeling of a failure, and like I'm a failure, and people were looking at me as a has-been, and that's not the case. That wasn't the case. People were so happy to, when I come back, people are happy to see me. People were like, oh, like, what are you doing? Like, they're so excited about what I'm doing now, and it's like, oh, dang, like, what I did in the past, it's like it's not a, why am I forgetting the words? It's not a semblance on who I am as a person. It's just something that happened in the past and what I did. And we can, laugh about it. I laugh about everything now. But it's not a testament to my character about how many snaps I played, or how well I did, or how fast I ran, or how high I jumped. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. None of that stuff means anything. And if, you know, I had to go through that stuff, it was definitely a tough few years after school, just post football, post that life, because that was so my life for so long. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know how to act any way else. I didn't know how to be around people that wasn't into that either. But definitely, I love playing it. I would go back again if I could, but I definitely enjoy having more things of an outlet now than what I did back then, because I had these wants and desires back then too, but I just didn't know how to express it because, one, the time thing, and two, it wasn't cool to do that, especially being a college football athlete. You're judged a lot on what you like and dislike. You gotta like certain things. You can't like this. You gotta like that. You can't like that. And people will hound you on these things. They will hound you. And it can be tough. You got a thick skin for that. I mean, I definitely did to a certain extent, but not to the point I have now. I mean, it's not even close. But that comes with age, it comes with time, it comes with growth and maturity. But yeah, definitely. If I could give, people, if you're, a young athlete, and you're going into college, or you're about to go into college, or you're someone who, you know, if you're, so let me start that over. If you're a young athlete going to college, I always say, join as many things as possible, meet as many people as possible, hang out with people outside of your sports team or your group or whatever, and make sure that you're getting exposure that you need to get, because I don't care who you are. If you're a football player, that's not the only thing you like. I don't care if you say that's your life, ball is life, as the saying goes, all that. You like other things, so give other things a chance, because this only lasts for a short period of time. Even if you happen to make the NFL 2, 3 years, you have a whole life on you after that, and you got to figure out what you enjoy. And you can't just sit and soak in what was in the life that you used to have. You need to kind of move forward and elevate and evolve into something that evolve what you need to be. And only you kind of know that. And if you want to hold yourself back because you're worried about what other people are saying, what other people thinking, what other people expect you to do, then you're not living the life that you need to be living. So, yeah, that's mostly everything. Um, I did the best I could explaining everything thoroughly. Hopefully I did, and everything I did makes sense. I know I can go off topic sometimes, but like I said, y'all, this is the first episode. We working at this. I appreciate y'all joining. Like I said, we gonna have some guests on. This is an area, I think this is a very topic that touches close to my soul, because one, I had to deal with it. So I feel like, I'm kind of I don't want to call myself an expert on the topic, but I definitely, you don't need to be a psychologist to kind of know what's going on. This is kind of a thing with like life experience, and then relaying the message back to other people and kind of helping them out. And then hopefully, other people can go through this process easier. My whole goal behind this was to have an outreach to people who are kind of stuck, and they used to have this one life, or they used to have this one way about going about things, and now they're altering, or they're adjusted, or they have adjusted, but they don't know exactly kind of where they want to go with it. More so focusing on athletes, but also if you didn't play a sport and you did, like, I don't know, you grew up and you were just like a very good scholar, and now you want to go into like music or something, or not music, like you want to go into, I don't know, being a restaurant owner. When people are like, oh, like you were so good in school, you had all the good grades, you should be going to Harvard and Yale, and you should be a lawyer, you should be a doctor. Well, that's not what I want to do. So don't let people put you in this box and think that, oh, you just because you did this in the past, what means you got to do in the future. No, like you could do one thing in the past and then do a completely different thing in the future and have just as much success as anyone else would. But the problem is people expect you to kind of just fit in this little box, and mentally they can get inside your head and think, well, yeah, I think you're right, maybe I should do that, when that's not the case whatsoever. But on that note, I appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. If you stayed this long, you a real one. If you stayed this long, leave a comment so I know you stayed this long, because I know this was a little bit long, but that's what it's for. It's the first episode. We getting the monkey off our back. Fun fact, this is not the first time I had to record this. I had to record it before, and something messed up with the sound, so hopefully the sound does not mess up on this one. But anywho, even if it does, I guess we'll just have to record it again. But I don't think it messed up this time. Yeah. Until next time, y'all. Be good. Step out your box. Meet new people. Do new things. Make your inner soul, life, and spirit happy. And I will see you next time. Peace and blessings. Salute.